There have been times when you wondered why is it that some people are always treated with respect, while you, no matter how kind or considerate you are, still get overlooked. You're not confrontational. You're not impolite. You try to keep the peace, stay respectful, and always do the right thing. And yet some people don't hesitate to interrupt you mid-conversation, dismiss your thoughts, or throw in those half-jokes laced with mockery, as if your presence is just something extra in the room they believe they own. The paradox is you didn't do anything wrong, but perhaps you haven't done the right thing not with enough strength. In this world, respect doesn't always come from being nice. It comes from presence, from energy, from the way you make people feel that they can't just treat you however they want. And that kind of presence doesn't require raising your voice or putting on a show. It comes from something quieter, deeper, the calmness in your gaze, the way you refuse to react emotionally, the way you hold your silence not out of weakness, but out of control, the way you move forward without needing to prove anything to anyone. You can be a good person, even a valuable one. But if you don't draw clear boundaries, if you don't send the subtle but unmistakable message that says, I'm not someone you can treat casually, then people, whether consciously or not, will test you. They'll see how soft you are, how easily you forgive, how long you're willing to stay in places that don't honor you. Every time you smile through a subtle insult, every time you explain yourself just to avoid judgment, every time you shrink a little to avoid upsetting someone, you're silently telling them, you can get away with this again. And that's exactly where disrespect begins, not with loud confrontation, but with quiet permission. But here's the truth, you can change that. Not with anger, not by pretending to be cold or emotionless, but by shifting something inside you, something permanent and powerful. You become the kind of person no one dares to disrespect, not because you're intimidating, but because you're immovable. They sense that you can't be pulled into their games, can't be shaken by shallow words, can't be bent out of shape just to keep the peace. In this video, you'll learn 5 powerful principles drawn from Stoic philosophy that will help you build a presence, a mindset, and an inner posture that silently demands respect. Not by force, not by fear, but by the kind of clarity that causes others to pause before they speak. No yelling, no arguing, just grounded strength, quiet dignity, and a level of self-respect that forces the world to adjust around you, not because you asked, but because they realize they have no other option. That's how you become the person no one dares to disrespect. 1. When a silent stare is the strongest statement you can make. Not every word deserves a response, and not every act of disrespect deserves your reaction. There's a simple, silent, yet powerful tool you can use: your gaze. A calm, steady look. No anger, no emotion, no words, just full presence, no avoidance, no compromise. In a world where people are constantly talking over each other, fighting to be seen and heard, silence can be the most unsettling force in the room. People who disrespect you aren't looking for truth, they're looking for reaction. They want to see you flinch. They want to feel taller by making you smaller. They want to drag you into their game, where you're always the one trying to explain, defend, or retreat. But when you simply look at them, no words, no justification, no retreat, the game collapses. A quiet, steady gaze held for a few seconds is often enough to make someone pause and see themselves. No one feels at ease when they're being stared at without a word. Your eyes become a mirror, and in that mirror they're forced to face their own behavior without the cover of fake laughter or your usual politeness to soften the blow. When you stay silent and meet them with that look, you're sending a message loud and clear. I'm not playing this game. I see exactly what's happening and I won't react the way you want me to. You don't fight back, but you don't retreat either. You hold your ground like a rock in the middle of a storm. And it's that unwavering stillness that makes people take a step back. That gaze is not aggression. It's refusal. It's a statement that you won't be pulled into emotional traps. And once they realize they can't get a rise out of you, they lose control. I remember sitting in a meeting once where a guy kept interrupting me like he had a license to speak over anyone. I tried to respond respectfully. I tried to reassert myself. Nothing changed. The whole room fell quiet. He stumbled, looked away, and didn't interrupt me again. Not because I did anything dramatic, but because I dared to look without flinching. That's when I realized sometimes the strongest no you can give is to say nothing at all. The silent stare isn't just a way to make others pause. It's a reminder to yourself that you don't owe anyone a reaction to validate your worth. You don't have to explain yourself to be heard. You don't have to shrink to keep the peace. You just have to stand still and let that stillness speak for you. When you master the power of a silent stare, you don't just make people second-guess their actions. You begin reclaiming the power you used to give away without realizing it: emotional power, mental power, and inner authority. And that is the first step toward becoming the kind of person no one dares to disrespect. No reaction, no retreat, no need to prove anything. Just you and the look that makes them adjust themselves without you ever saying a word. 2. When silence becomes a power that can't be broken. There's a deeply human reflex when we're disrespected, misunderstood, or attacked. We feel the urge to respond. We want to defend ourselves, to explain, to push back, because we believe if we don't say something, we'll be seen as weak, as easy to push aside, as someone not worth respecting. But that's the trap. That's exactly what the person disrespecting you wants: for you to react. Your reaction is their proof. It shows them they've gotten to you, that their words found a weak spot, that they can manipulate your emotional state even just a little, and with that they gain the upper hand. That's why when you choose silence, true silence, not avoidance, not fear, not passivity, but purposeful, grounded, intentional silence, you cut off the one thing they need to feel powerful: your attention. Silence, when used with awareness, is not passive. It is the purest form of power. It says, I do not spend my energy on anything beneath me. I remember once at a dinner, someone made a snide remark about my work, one of those half-joking, half-serious comments wrapped in a smirk. The old me would have tried to explain, or laughed it off, or responded just enough to prove it didn't bother me. But this time, I said nothing. I didn't laugh. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I looked at them for a second, then turned away as if the comment had never existed. The table went quiet. The person who made the remark looked instantly uncomfortable, like they had thrown a stone into a well and heard no echo. In that moment, they realized I'm not playing along. Silence doesn't just confuse people. It makes them face their own words with nothing to hide behind. No comeback. No deflection. No outrage to blame. They threw the arrow. You didn't block it. You didn't fire back. You just stood still and let it fall to the ground. Your calm unsettles them because it removes their control. And for people who thrive on dominance, nothing is more threatening than someone they cannot provoke. Even more than that, silence is a gift you give yourself. It's how you protect your energy, your peace, and your emotional space from words that don't deserve access to you. When you no longer feel the need to respond to prove your worth, you've stepped into a higher realm of self-possession. Stoicism never teaches you to win every argument. It teaches you to recognize which arguments were never worth entering in the first place. And once you understand that, you realize silence is not weakness. It's a choice. A choice that reflects depth. A choice that radiates dignity. Because in the end, what truly makes people cautious around you isn't what you shout out loud. It's what you're strong enough to keep to yourself. 3. Stop explaining yourself to earn respect. One of the most common habits that quietly erodes your self-worth is over-explaining. You explain why you turned down the invitation. You explain why you chose this job instead of another. You explain why you're quiet, why you withdrew, why you live differently from most people. You keep talking, as if you're standing on trial. You justify, as if someone else has the right to judge your life. What you don't realize is this: every time you over-explain, you're unconsciously asking for approval. You're putting the other person in a position of authority, giving them the power to label your decisions as reasonable or unreasonable, right or wrong. And the more often you do that, the more people start to believe they're entitled to an explanation from you every time. But the truth is, no one has that right. No one else lives your life. No one else is responsible for your feelings, your outcomes, or your choices except you. And for that reason alone, you owe no one an explanation but yourself. Unfortunately, most of us don't see this until we've become so used to justifying everything, like an employee reporting to a manager. We want to be understood. We want people to empathize. We fear being misjudged, misunderstood, or looked down on. But here's the truth. People who are already looking down on you don't need a reason to judge. And people who truly respect you don't need an explanation to accept you. Next time someone asks why you didn't attend the party, you don't have to invent a long list of reasons to keep them happy. Just say, "I needed some space that evening." When someone questions why you took a different path, you don't need to unveil your 5-year plan. Just say, "Because it feels right for me right now." And then stop talking. Don't explain. Don't overcorrect. Don't let their silence trick you into thinking you've done something wrong. Learn to let your words stand on their own without needing support from anyone else's approval. Because the truth is, every time you stop explaining, you strengthen your trust in yourself. And every time you feel the need to justify, you're silently doubting your own worth. The Stoics never acted to please the crowd. They asked themselves one thing: is this aligned with my nature? Does it honor the values I live by? If the answer was yes, they moved forward quietly, firmly, without needing applause, without seeking to be understood. Because real strength isn't found in how well you explain your choices. It's found in the fact that you don't need to explain them at all. Remember this? Freedom begins the moment you stop asking for permission to be yourself. And respect begins the moment you stop trying to convince anyone that you deserve it. 4. When stepping back is the most powerful statement you can make. Not every relationship needs to end in a fight. It doesn't need a dramatic farewell. Sometimes all it needs is for you to quietly step back. Not because you're weak, not because you're angry, but because you've seen the truth that some people, no matter how long you've known them, will never respect your space, your emotions, or your values. You've given them chance after chance. You've told yourself they didn't mean it, they'll change, or maybe I'm just being too sensitive. But over and over again, you're the one who ends up hurt. You're the one who stays silent to keep the peace. You're the one who bends yourself just to coexist in their presence. Then one day you realize you can't keep doing this, not because you've grown weaker, but because you've grown stronger. In a world full of noise and false performances, distance is clarity. You don't need to post an announcement. You don't need to explain your exit. All you need is to show up less, respond slower, and start choosing yourself more often. And that shift, subtle as it maybe, sends a loud and unmistakable message. You are no longer the version of yourself that tolerates being used or overlooked. Distance isn't punishment. It's a boundary. And when held firmly, that boundary becomes a silent declaration. I respect myself too much to keep allowing what drains me. Once you start doing this, you'll be surprised to see. You don't have to say, "I've had enough." You just have to stop showing up where you're not valued. Yes, guilt might creep in at first. You'll hear the voices, "But they're family, but we've known each other for years, but they need me." Those same voices are what kept you trapped in relationships that slowly wore you down. But now you understand. Respect isn't measured by how long someone's been in your life. It's measured by how they treat you every time you're around them. Think of it this way. Your life is a limited space. You don't have room for everyone in the front row. Those who constantly make you doubt yourself, feel small, or question your reality, they don't deserve that close a seat to your heart. You have the right to choose who gets access. You have the right to reset the distance, not out of hatred, but because you're tired of surviving what you should never have to endure. And most importantly, you have the right to walk away from any space that no longer matches who you're becoming. Distance lets you breathe. Distance gives you clarity. Distance makes room for the people and things that lift you, not weigh you down. Because in the end, what makes you worthy of respect isn't how hard you try to hold on. It's the strength it takes to walk away from anyone who no longer knows how to hold you with care. 5. When you embody self-respect. When someone disrespects you, the very first thing they want is to make you shrink. They want you to lower your head. They want you to feel smaller than them, even just a little. They want you to lose your footing in your own sense of worth, so you respond the way they want, uncertain, uncomfortable, second-guessing yourself. And if you're not careful, you'll fall right into that trap, not through your words, but through your posture. Posture is the oldest language we know. Before we ever learned to speak, we knew how to bow our heads in fear, hunch our shoulders in insecurity, and avoid eye contact when we felt like we didn't measure up. On the other hand, when you keep your back straight, eyes steady, and chin up, it's not just a physical stance. It's a silent declaration: I know who I am, and I'm not apologizing for it. You might think that sounds like a superficial gesture, something cosmetic, but it's not. It's inner discipline made visible. Because you can't keep your head high for long unless you deeply believe in your own value. You don't need to speak. You don't need to argue. You just need to be fully present, clear, grounded, and unshakable. And that presence alone will make people think twice. I've been in rooms where someone constantly made harmless jokes, the kind aimed straight at your vulnerabilities, disguised as casual remarks. In the past, I would have awkwardly laughed it off or tried to clarify myself. But one day I stopped. I didn't dodge. I didn't retaliate. I simply looked at them steady and silent and held my posture. No lowered head, no forced smile, no emotional retreat. And something strange happened. They backed off. Not because I intimidated them, but because I made it clear their words had no power over me, unless I allowed it. When you walk through the world wrapped in self-respect like invisible armor, you don't need to fight. You don't need to run. You just need to stand and let people realize you don't get pushed around so easily. That lifted chin doesn't say I'm better than you. It says I know what I'm worth, and you don't get to define that. Respect doesn't come from others validating you. It comes from validating yourself every single day, believing you deserve respect, not because you're flawless, but because you live consciously, with integrity and inner strength. And when you live that way, you become the kind of person others don't dare to disregard, not because you threaten them, but because you quietly remind them they don't have the right. In the end, you don't need apologies from those who disrespected you. You don't need one last argument to set the record straight. What you need is a quiet but final transformation, to become someone no one even tries to mistreat anymore. That doesn't happen overnight. It begins the first time you choose not to respond the way you used to. With the calm glance you hold instead of defending yourself. With the moment you stay silent even when your palms are sweating. With the distance you quietly set without needing to explain. With the step you take out of a space where you once felt small, head high, heart clean, simply because you finally remembered who you are. The older you get, the clearer it becomes. Respect isn't a prize given to those who behave. It's the natural consequence of having clear boundaries, guarded values, and an inner compass that doesn't wobble. People only disrespect you when they believe they can. And every time you respond with a nervous laugh, an over-explained answer, or more silent endurance, you're sending a message. I'll stay no matter how you treat me. But when you start holding your silence, your space, your posture, and your worth without asking for permission, everything shifts. People may not like you, but they will hesitate. They will choose their words more carefully. They will consider how they treat you. And most importantly, they will realize they can no longer manipulate you the way they used to. You don't need to force yourself to become untouchable. You just need to be clear in your presence, awake in your emotions, and grounded in the way you live. When you do that, you won't need to demand respect. It will either rise to meet you, or your presence will silently push the wrong people away. This isn't a defense strategy. It's a way of life. A way of standing in such quiet strength that others must rise to meet your standard, because they can no longer pull you down to meet theirs. So remember this. You don't need to say much. Just hold the gaze. Hold the silence. Hold the boundary. Hold your head high. And above all, hold on to yourself. Because when you fully become yourself, powerful, steady, unshakable, the world will know how to treat you. Not because you demanded it, but because they no longer dare to do otherwise.